Okay, so this video is going to go over kind of how to adjust some of our wall parameters, as well as then adding in a floor, a roof, and a foundation to the building. Now, I do my floors a little kind of differently than some other tutorials you might find. One of the things I really like about this software is there's no really right way to go about doing any of the parts. But what we're going to do just to start is adjust our parameters of our walls. Right now, we just have generic 8-inch walls for our outside and generic um, 5-inch walls for our interiors. So we're going to adjust some of those. Similar to our 3-room shed from AutoCAD, we're going to add a siding, sheathing, stud, and then interior finish on them. So go ahead and click on any of the exterior walls. It doesn't really matter which one you choose. And then we're going to go into Edit Type. Now, when we were working with edit type in our windows and doors, I was really adamant about always make sure you duplicate it first. And that is still a pretty important feature, but what we're actually going to do with this one is we're not going to duplicate it at all, so that this way, once I change this one wall, every 8-inch generic wall in this project is going to update along with it. So I'm not going to duplicate this one. What I am going to do is go into edit the structure. And then this is where I can add in those different features or layers. So you can kind of think of it like using the offset tool in AutoCAD a bit. Um, right now we just have this one layer, this just generic function of structure. So we are going to insert in 3 additional layers by just hitting the insert key 3 times. And then we want to move some of these up. So I'm going to move this layer up as well as this layer. And then I'm going to move another layer down. So this is our outside. This is going to be our siding, our sheathing, and then this is going to be our stud, and this will be our interior finish. So the next thing I'm going to do is adjust their functions. So I'm going to make a function for my outside siding, finish 1, a function for my plywood sheathing as a substrate. I'm going to leave row 4 as a structure, and then for row 6, I'm going to make that a finish 2. I don't know if there's a difference between finish 1 and finish 2, if I'm honest, but I always make my exteriors finish 1 and my interiors finish 2. The next thing I'm going to do is adjust their thicknesses, and I'm just going to use the same sizes that I would use for my 3-room shed. So for my siding, I'm going to do 3/4 of an inch. For my plywood, I'm going to do a 1/2 inch. For my stud, I'm going to do a 2x6. And for my interior, my drywall, I'm going to do another 1/2 inch, which, whoops, I very much did not type that. Whoop, I'm hitting a bunch of stuff. None of them are the keys I want to hit. There we go. And so if I have all of these entered correctly, my total thickness up here should be 7 1/4. Um, the next thing I'm going to do is adjust the materials for each one of these. So if you click in the material column where it says by category, a little dot button is going to pop up. And you're just going to want to click on that. And that's going to open up the material browser. And I'm just going to make mine look how it kind of looks when you first open it up. So these are all of the materials that are currently loaded into our project. And I'm going to search up at the top for gypsum. And I'll see that this is currently in my project. And just to look at some of the features of it, if I go into like the graphics tab, we'll see here that in a section view, it's going to automatically put that cut pattern in of sand, which is really nice. If you're going to work in consistent colors, which we talked about down here, I would super recommend checking off this use render appearance. Otherwise, it's not going to make much of a difference for you. And then another thing that we can sort of look at that's pretty cool is here in the physical tab as well as the thermal tab, we have a lot of info about this, so that can help build out a really accurate energy model, or especially like a structural model. We can get a lot of that information here from Revit too. So I'm just going to click OK, and now I've got gypsum wallboard 1/2 inch thick here, and so we can see our R value and our thermal mass being built up. Now for our stud, if I go into edit type, there is a material for lumber, but we don't want to use it because from what my understanding is, if I use this material here, it's going to make it as if my wall was made out of 5.5 inch solid piece of wood, which it's not. So if I want a more accurate number here, I would actually going to search for joist, and then we have a wood joist and rafter layer, and then one as well with batt insulation, which our exterior walls do have. So we're going to use that one. Again, like back here in the graphics tab, we don't really need to focus on any of these. You could check this off if you want, but we would never see this in a render, so I'm just going to click on OK. For my plywood, I'm going to click again on by category and then click on that dot, dot, dot. And I'm just going to search for plywood sheathing. And you could check this off. One thing I do want to change here is this cut pattern. So by default, it's not putting a pattern in for plywood. So I'm just going to click on that cut pattern and apply a pattern for plywood and click OK. And then for my finish here, I'm going to click again, click on that dot, 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 and I'm going to search for siding. And now there is no siding in this document. So what I need to do is open up the material library by clicking on this little up arrow. If this is just really tiny, you can pull it up more. And I want to load this material in. So I'm going to click on this little up arrow to load it into the document. Again, this is one where if you're going to use consistent colors, I would recommend checking off this box. And then I'm going to give mine a surface pattern of horizontal lines. So that way it's just going to have that hatch pattern on there in all of my elevations. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK again. So I've got all of my materials built out and my thicknesses. I'll click OK one more time, and again, we're going to click OK one final time. And so we see here that we've got all of these sidings. If any of your sidings are on like the inside, so this wall here doesn't have that pattern, it's because this wall is inside out. So I just got to click on it and hit the space bar. One way you could avoid that is drawing in a clockwise motion, but most people don't remember to do something like that. And if I come down here to my visual style and I switch it to consistent colors, this is where we can sort of see some of those different parts or features to it. So I'm going to do the same thing with my interior walls, is I just need to click on any one of the interior walls, doesn't matter which one I pick. I'm going to go edit type. Typically, we would duplicate it, but we don't have to in this scenario because this way it's going to update all of our interior walls, which will be kind of nice. So I'm going to edit its structure. I'm going to insert in 2 layers because we're just going to have drywall, stud, and then drywall. So I'm going to move one up and then move another one down. For row 1, I'm going to give it a function of finish 2. In row 5, I'm going to give a function of finish 2 as well. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch gypsum wallboard, a 2x4, and then another piece of 1/2 inch gypsum wallboard. So in total, my thickness should be 4.5. And then for my materials, I'm going to do in row 1, I'm going to search for gypsum. You could also up here, you could search for drywall because Revit will know it has like little tags here in its identity, I believe. There's something in here that makes it come in, maybe in here in this keynote. Maybe, I don't know, but I know that there's something that makes it just pop up, which is just kind of cool. So we can add it in. For our structure, we're going to search for joist again, even though this isn't a joist. And we're going to make it this layer that doesn't have batt insulation. That's not going to be typical in an interior wall. And then in layer 5, we'll do gypsum wallboard as well. And then OK. And then OK again. And we'll notice, because I'm in consistent colors, the big change is now all of my walls are white on the inside. If I was stuck in hidden line, I'm not going to see much of a big change really altogether, all in all. And so I've got my walls defined now. My next step that I'm going to do is put in my floors. And so I'm going to go into my level 1 floor plan by just double clicking on my level 1 plan. It wasn't up here. anymore because I had closed out of the software and then opened it back up. And I'm going to use the floor tool, which by default doesn't have a keyboard shortcut, and I haven't assigned it one personally, but it's this tool right up here in the architecture tab. Once you start the floor tool, you are not going to be able to do anything else until you either say, please make my floor, or never mind, I'm going to cancel it. I'm going to make my floor type. I kind of make my floors as two separate like layers. I'll make one of just the overall structure, and then I do another smaller floors of like the finishes in there. So I'm going to use this wood joist 10-inch wood finish, but I'm going to do an edit type, and I'm going to duplicate it and just call this one like subfloor structure. The name you give it, again, doesn't really have any bearing on how it functions. I want to edit it, and I'm just going to remove this finish here, this oak flooring. I'm just going to remove it altogether. So essentially, I'm just making a 10-inch thick floor that is going to be my 2x10s and then a 3/4 inch piece of plywood on top. And so I'll click OK, OK again, and I'm making my subfloor structure. I want to extend it into the core boundary of my wall, which is, you can see too when I hover over there, see how that dashed line is not directly on the edge? That's exactly what I want, because I only want it going to the outside of the stud. And so before I choose, I'm going to hover over that edge and then hit the tab key once and then click, so I can get the whole just kind of boundary going on here. And then I'll say OK to finish off my floor. If we go look at it 3D, which again is this button right here, we can kind of see, excuse me, my cat just jumped onto the microphone. We can kind of see that there's now like a little floor underneath here that wasn't there beforehand, which, whoops, I accidentally double clicked on that wall. So here's my floor system. We have a problem in that our walls now aren't long enough, but we'll fix that in just a moment. My next step is I'm going to make small, really thin floors floating on top of these floors to represent my finishes. So I'm going to go back into my level 1 plan. I'm going to use the floor tool one more time. So I'm going to say floor, and this time I'm going to edit my properties. I'm going to do a carpet finish like in the bedrooms. So I'll say carpet finish, edit type. I'm going to duplicate it and just call this only carpet. I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to get rid of my structure here. You'll notice when you go to click on this other one, it's not going to let us delete it. And that's because something has to exist in this core boundary. So I'm going to move this down, and then I can delete this layer here. And whenever we're going to do our floors this way, we always want to kind of take note of how thick the total thickness is, because we want to do an offset of that amount. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to click OK again. And then before I put my floor down, I'm going to give it a thickness of 1/8 of an inch, a height offset of 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to use my line tool. So I'm going to click on line, and I'm just going to trace around the interior of this bedroom. So notice how I'm kind of going just only from these walls. And I'm going to do another trace. I'll put myself in dark mode. It's a little easier to see those pink lines then around this one. I am ignoring some of the walls. So like I'm ignoring that closet wall. It just makes it a little easier to place this down. I'm aware that like there wouldn't be carpet underneath this stud. So I've got my 2 places. It needs to be one complete closed loop. And then I've got my height offset of 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to click OK. And you'll notice with carpet, it puts a little hatch there. We'll discuss that in just a bit. And then I'm going to do a tile in my bathrooms. So I'm going to start the floor tool again. I'm going to, this time, pick this ceramic tile one, edit type, duplicate it, and I'll call this one only tile, edit its structure. I'm going to delete, move these two down, delete this as well. And if you wanted to adjust the tile, like right now, it's just these mosaic ones. If we click on that dot, 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 you could do like these porcelain ones. You can adjust in the graphics tab. So right now, they're going to come in for whatever reason with this purple color if you're in consistent colors. Or you can adjust this pattern if you want patterns there. But in reality, they're actually just going to be plain white once we have this load in. They're not actually going to be purple for it. But I'm just going to click OK, and then OK, and OK again. And so now I'm in only tile. I want to adjust my height offset to 3/4 because that's how thick this is in total. And then say, instead of using my line tool, which I could do, I'm going to use my rectangle tool to fill in from this corner to this one. And then I'm going to use, instead of the rectangle, I'm going to use the line tool because I want to make sure I fill in that little bit of like doorway that otherwise wouldn't have floor on it, a finish on it. So I'm just going to trace around. And you always want to make sure you're making a closed loop. It has to be closed, fitting together spaces. Maybe you want to put tile in here as well. I'm just going to leave that for wood. So I'll click OK. And now I've got my tile finish in the bathroom. And I'll finish it up by then doing a wood floor throughout the rest of the structure. So for that, I'm going to go back into the floor tool one more time. I'm going to switch my floor type to this wood joist wood finish, edit type, duplicate it to oak flooring. You could call it again, whatever you'd like. And then we're going to edit its structure to only have this material. So we're going to move this material down and then delete the actual structure part. And then click OK, OK. And now I'm going to just trace around all of my areas that I haven't put a floor in yet. And sometimes this could be a little laggy to try to get like them to snap to the places you want. Why? Not sure. Just how it is sometimes. And I could have brought that tile out if I wanted to instead of using the rectangle tool. Same, I could have brought this carpet out. I just don't want to have any awkwardness, which I might have a little warning that says I have an overlap there, but I'm not going to worry about it. And then I'll go straight down. And sometimes I do have to have to hit escape and then start with my tools up here again. Just kind of how the tool works and how the function works. So I'm going to hit escape a bunch of times and I'm going to intentionally mess some things up. So like I'm going to delete this line here. If I try to make my floor and hit the check, it's going to say we can't do that because it's not closed. So I've got to hit continue and I've got to bring these lines to meet each other. The same thing then of if, and my cat keeps trying to lay down on the microphone, of if I have lines that are way longer. If these lines don't meet, and sometimes it is just a little bit of an amount, it's going to warn me that these lines don't meet. And you can use the trim tool, which is keyboard shortcut TR, to bring this line and this line together. So it has to be all one closed loop. I'm going to hit the green check. And it's warning me that I have a little overlap. Probably over here, this overlaps a little bit, and probably over here, but I'm not worried about it. Some students will always complain that they don't like which way their flooring is facing. So if you go into edit boundary, you should be able to, if you go into span and click on another side, change it. But I'm not worried about it because one thing for me is I really hate having all of these different hatches for the floor in here. I think it just makes the drawing way too busy and too much is going on. And it makes it really hard to actually like pay attention to the parts of the drawing that matter. So what I would recommend doing is hiding the floors or getting rid of the floors visually in this view. So to do that, we're going to go into our visibility and graphics settings, which is keyword shortcut VG. And this is where we can do overrides for just this particular view, floor plan level 1. So like one thing I would do is here in my floor options, you could potentially half tone it. So if I check that half tone and hit apply, you'll see that these got a lot lighter. I still kind of think it's too much personally, so I would just uncheck the visibility of floors altogether. So floors exist in my model, they just don't exist in this drawing. Another thing I often like doing is the walls. So I'm just going to type W just to get down there a little faster. I like putting in a cut pattern in my walls. So I like doing an override of a solid fill, and I usually do like this light gray. And then again, I'll hit apply. So I have that solid fill without having to be in conceptual colors. And I'll click OK. And then we look at it 3D. I've got a couple of different flooring types. I've got carpet in here, I've got tile, I've got carpet in here, and I've got my wood floor. If I go into consistent colors, we have some of those different colors. And again, my tile is this purple color, but I don't know, it's a pretty purple, so I'll keep it around. So the next thing I'll focus on is the fact that like my walls, I want this siding and sheathing to go down and cover my floor here. So I'm going to hover over any one of the exterior walls. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to hit tab once and then click so I get the chain of all those exterior walls. And I want to give them a base offset. I want to bring them down past level 1. So I'm going to go down negative 0 space 10, which is going to bring them down 10 inches. So those walls now are going to cover where the top of the floor is for it. And so now they are a little bit further down, covering that part up. Looks a little bit nicer. And especially then it's going to make our section view look much more accurate. I'll switch myself back to hidden line just because I'm not a huge fan of consistent colors personally. And then my next step is I'm going to add in my foundation. So to add my foundation, I need to go into an elevation view or a section view, but we don't have one. Because the first thing I need to do is add a level, but you'll see here that I can't add a level in this particular view. And it even says when we hover over it that you need to be in a section or elevation. So I'm going to go into any of these elevations here, doesn't matter which one you pick. And then level is either keyboard shortcut LL or this button right here. When you go to add a level, the best practice would be to start it lined up over here somewhere. Don't pay attention to the height too much just yet. And then move it all the way across until it's lined up on this side. By default, we should have had this checked off. If you hadn't had this checked off, then it's not going to make a plan view over here. So I now have level 3 sitting 13 feet under the ground. What I want to do is rename it. So I'm going to call it foundation. It's going to ask, do you want to rename the corresponding view over here? And so I would say yes. And then height-wise, this is always going to vary depending on the size of your structure and also like the soil bearing capacity. I'm going to do, say, like negative 6 feet for my height. So it's 6 feet underneath level 1. Now, when I go into my foundation floor plan, which I can either double click here or double click on here, I may or may not see anything. Realistically, all I see is this CAD file, which is not really what I want to see here. And then some windows are showing up in the view for whatever reason. So I want to hide these windows. So I'm going to right click on one of the windows and say hide in view category. And I also don't want the CAD file in this view as well. So I'm going to click on the CAD file, right click, hide in view, and I could do element or category in this case. But I don't have a floor plan to trace around, and that's because my view is 6 feet under the level 1, and my cut plane is 4 feet above, so the floor plan itself is not visible. What we want to do, just so we have something to trace around, is we want to place an underlay of level 1, and so that shows us our level 1 plan. And then for our orientation, we also want it to be looking down. Sometimes by default, this will look up, which actually maybe we want look up in this case because we want to be able to see that core. So, whoops, my bad. Or I said the wrong thing, but I did the correct thing. So now we have something to kind of trace around for our foundation. And we are going to start with a new wall, which is going to be up here, keyboard shortcut WA. For our wall type, we can use this generic 8-inch masonry. This is going to be a CMU, so this will work perfect for us. And then we want a base constraint of foundation. We want it to start at that level. And then we want it to go up to level 1. But we also want to put a top offset of negative 10 inches because we need it to sit underneath where the floor is. Now, before I start clicking as well, I want to adjust my location line, which I can do up here or over here, to the core face exterior. So we want it to snap to the core of our stud or to the stud. And that way it's going to want to snap to there. We could also use this pick line tool so that this way we can, let me make sure, hold on, no, because that's not what I want. Maybe I want core face interior. Yes, so I want a core face interior, and then I could just click on each of those lines there to just add in my foundation wall. And I could also use tab to just quickly apply them onto each of these, but I don't mind clicking each one of them. Just be a little careful about which side you're clicking on and going for. Then I'll look at my building three-dimensionally a little bit. I've got that foundation wall sitting underneath each and all of them. And my next step would be to add in a footing onto the foundation wall. So I'm going to hit escape a bunch of times. The keyboard shortcut to add a footing is FT for footing. By default, it puts us in this bearing footing that's 3 foot by 12 or 3 foot by 1 foot. We also have this retaining option where then it's going to be a little bit of a different size, or what I usually do is edit type. I duplicate it. And so let's just make this one a 2 foot by 1 foot. And so we're just going to adjust its width to be 2 and then click OK. And this is one where, you are just clicking underneath, but you can also, by Control Z, hover over one, hit tab, and then click once, and it'll put a footing around all of that foundation wall for you. So I've got my foundation here. We're going to, just because it's our first Revit project, we're not going to put any site on the building at all. And we are almost done for this video. So my next step then is I'm going to add a roof. I like to go into my floor plan to do a roof. So I'm going to go into my level 1 floor plan, and this olive green line here, this is our roof. And the way the Dogwood house is we kind of have a one gable roof here and then another gable here, and they come together to form like a dormer with a valley sitting in between here. So to put a roof in, we've got a couple of different options, but they're all going to involve the roof tool, which also does not have a keyboard shortcut. But I'm going to do a roof by footprint. And what I'm going to do is adjust my roof type to the wood rafter 8-inch asphalt. And then I'm going to use this rectangle tool to just go from one corner of this overhang to the other. If I click the green check to make my roof, I'm going to have several problems happening with it at the moment. So I'm going to hit the green check to show you the problems. If you want to just fast forward, I guess you definitely could. I'm going to hit my green check and look at my building 3D. My first problem is that my roof's sitting inside my house, which is a pretty massive problem. And that's because since I drew it on my level 1 floor plan, it's sitting at level 1. So I need it up on level 2. My next issue is that I have a hip style roof, not a gable. I just want a flat edge here. I only want these two sides east and west sloped. So I'm going to click on this roof and edit its footprint. And what I need to do is get rid of the slope on this side and this side. So I'm going to click on that line or that edge and uncheck define slope. I could do the same thing then, clicking on this edge and coming over here if I needed to. Additionally, if we look at our plans, we have a slope of 8/12, and you want to make sure that you're doing that in inches. So I can click on these, or I could come over here. I could change this a bunch of ways. I could even change it after I finish it. And now when I hit the green check, I've got a gable style roof here. Now, I still have a pretty big, massive problem, but we'll work on our other roof here and then we'll fix that problem. So I'm going to go back into my level 1 floor plan to do this roof. I'm going to go back into the roof tool. It doesn't have a keyboard shortcut. And this time, I'm going to be a little smart and I'm going to change my base level to level 2 beforehand. Then I'm going to use my rectangle tool. And with this one, we don't want to bring it all the way. We just need to have it kind of foreshortened. So I don't want to even bring it like this far realistically. I guess I could, but I'm going to just make it kind of short. Hit escape about 3 or 4 times. I'm going to select both of those and undo their slope. I'm going to select both of these and change their slope to 8/12 instead of 9. And then I'm going to hit my green check. It looks like nothing happened in this view, but if I go to my 3-dimensional view, there's my roof. And what I need to do is extend this one out. So I'm going to click on anything at all in my drawing. It doesn't matter if I click on this wall or this door even. All I want is to bring this modify tool up so I can click on the join unjoin roof tool. With this, you click on the edge you want and the face you want to bring it to. So see how that animation just showed us a little preview? So for this roof, I'm going to click on this edge and this face, and it's going to bring that roof over to it. And so now I have those roofs joined. My last step for fixing everything with my roof is going to be to just bring all of these walls up. So I accidentally double clicked here, so I'm just going to hit cancel. And that is click on the wall, attach top to base, click on the roof. Click on the wall, attach top to base, click on the roof. We can't really do a chain, unfortunately, because like with the tab tool, because of the fact that we do have 2 different roofs. So attach top to base, click on the roof, click on this wall, attach top to base, click on this roof. But thankfully we don't have that many walls to attach to the base. And then this should be my last one. And so now we've got, and this is where too we can really see like these elevations coming together pretty easily without a heck of a lot of issues or problems. So we've got our building almost ready to go. In our next video, we're going to focus on adding in components. So that's things like furniture, appliances, as well as then we're going to focus on annotating. So adding in dimensions and other parts and features.